Omar stared at himself in the bathroom mirror, trying to figure out if he could keep his emotions in check. Took a minute, but he managed to achieve the calm look he needed. This was going to be hard. He leaned on the edge of the sink and stared at the porcelain below his face. He noticed a small ring of grime around the drain and the film covering the worn chrome. The shine was gone. What a metaphor, he sighed. He listened, hoping to hear heavy footsteps in the hallway, followed by the sound of the front door closing. But he heard nothing. If he stayed in the bathroom any longer, it would look like he was hiding. That couldn't happen. Omar pulled himself together, looked in the mirror again, and decided it was close enough to what he needed. Now came the hardest part. He opened the door, and with a slight creak from the top hinge, the muffled sound of voices coming from the bedroom a short distance down the hallway ceased. He entered the door, walked down the hallway, descended the stairs, and went into the kitchen loudly. There, he took out 2 mugs from the cupboard, a plain white one for himself and Rand's favorite, a clay mug. He turned on the coffee maker, took out some hazelnut butter and milk, knowing one way or another it wouldn't take long. He made a few more preparations just in case one of them was a phone call. Then he preloaded the document onto his tablet, which was lying in the living room. Omar was sitting at the kitchen bar, sipping his coffee, when Zara appeared through the archway, wearing one of her new blouses, showing off her new neckline. She had on a pair of new blue jeans, very tight, which she used to showcase her newly toned backside. She had put on glasses, a rare sight these days since she usually wore her new contact lenses. She stood in the archway, looking at Omar, tucking a dyed blonde strand of hair behind her ear. The expression on her face showed submission. Omar gestured toward the coffee in her mug, which sat on the other side of the bar, indicating that he wanted her to sit with him. Zara shook her head slightly with sad eyes and took 2 steps toward the bar, then sat down. So Rehman began staring at her mug. Omar remained silent. After a few seconds, Rehman looked up at him, hoping he would say something first. Omar stayed silent, still looking at her. Now what? Zara asked, straightening up in her chair as she realized she had been slightly slouching. Now, Omar repeated aloud, his voice calm and even. I think it's all over, isn't it? Zara slowly closed her eyes and sighed. I don't want it all to end like this, Rand said to her husband. Amira, Omar murmured. I can imagine you don't, but after today, after everything you've done, I'm not even angry anymore, Zara. I'm just tired. She looked at her mug and at the curves of her newly enlarged breasts. She reached out with both hands and put them around the top of the mug, feeling the soothing warmth. Omar had even added her favorite cream to the mug. She could smell it. It doesn't have to be the end, I guess, Breen said. Omar snorted in agreement, but remained silent, tapping the walls of his mug with his fingertips. Do you plan on staying like this? Asked Omar after a long pause. Zara wasn't used to being at a disadvantage with her husband. He'd never spoken to her like that before. The question left her in mild shock. It was a rhetorical question, Omar said, as Reen was about to answer. After all, that Omar nodded toward their bedroom. No way, Reen sighed, trying to find a way to make Omar understand. It doesn't mean anything. I don't feel anything for him. It was just for pleasure. I disagree, Omar stated, taking a small sip of his coffee. Zara reached across the table to touch her husband's hand, which was gripping his mug. Don't touch me, Omar snarled at her. Zara froze. I don't want your twisted, corrupted flesh touching mine anymore, Omar said, barely managing to control his emotions. Reen didn't know how to react to that. She pulled her hand back and grasped her mug again, staring at Omar with pain on her face, not understanding why this man, her intelligent, loving, patient husband, who had given her so much, was rejecting her like this. He had never spoken to her like that before, she thought. He liked the changes she had made to herself. I never should have agreed to this, Omar said, his eyes carefully scanning over her, the part of her visible above the bar. That's when everything went wrong, honey. We did this so I could feel better, Zara reminded him. Oh, I suppose it all started with that. Omar's voice was filled with anger, though his gaze remained steady. His tone did not. he struggled to keep everything inside. Liposuction, lifts, facelifts, then the first breast augmentation. Followed by dental surgeries, then a second breast surgery just to make them fuller. A nose job, all of it. Yeah, at first it was to make you feel better. Reman tried to respond, but Omar cut her off. After the first breast augmentation, it was all about making yourself as sexy as possible. Zara stood up so quickly that the bar stool toppled over. And what's wrong with that, huh? I was never sexy. Omar started to take a breath to say something, but Zara was on a roll, partly out of guilt, partly out of the need to go on the offensive, and partly out of fear. I was always just plain boring, Zara. Average. No one ever looked at me. No one ever noticed me. Oh sure, I was smart and did well in school, but no one wanted me. No one desired me. Crushed me, Omar. So yeah, when I had the chance, I fixed it. Omar snorted. Now I'm sexy. Men want me. Zara jabbed her finger at Omar, who was sitting at the kitchen bar watching her. I have big breasts, I have a butt, I have hair. My nose is fixed. No one overlooks me anymore. You just can't handle that. Omar smirked at his wife, but Reman didn't care. Your fragile little ego can't handle the fact that I took my problem into my own hands, made myself desirable to men, and you saw that as a threat. Zara accused, her voice growing louder. You can't handle the fact that you're married to all this. Reman ran her hands along the sides of her breasts, her waist, and her hips, covering as much as her hands could reach. Then she raised her hands and ran them through her long blonde hair, while simultaneously pushing out her chest and swaying her hips. She had practiced that movement and pose endlessly. Small Omar. Zara spat at her husband, striking another pose. You can't handle what I've become, she said. You'd prefer if I stayed simple, Zara, living in our tiny house, driving our old cars, just living. Zara snarled at him, feeling like she was gaining more control with every word. Well, I got my breast done, and I didn't stop there, she justified herself. I had the fat sucked out of my waist and I got a bonus for it. They fixed my nose and I landed a new client. The sexier I get, the more I gain. Omar looked at Zara, still sitting calmly at the bar, his hands folded around his coffee mug. He stared at her without flinching. You men are so simple, Zara jabbed. You think with the wrong part, not your brain, and I take advantage of that. See these breasts? She leaned forward again. These breasts you used to love. Got me a $5,000 bonus, and they'll bring in even more. Zara grabbed a strand of hair. These hair extensions. Remember when my hair used to be black? Zara pointed at a lock of her hair with the other hand. You men respond to blondes. I did this, and men started giving me sidelong glances. Zara turned around, sticking her rear in Omar's direction. And this butt. Men trip over themselves trying to get a good look when I walk by them. Zara turned back to face her unimpressed husband. And all of this, she gestured to herself. Thanks to it, I landed the regional manager. I'll get the next promotion, too. Omar. All of this is an investment, you idiot, Zara shouted. An investment in me, in us, in our future. Of course, I take advantage of how stupid men can be, but I got tired of being ignored, of being overlooked. If you can't handle it, then leave, and if you can, damn it, accept it. Omar asked, his tone calm, his voice at a normal volume, a slight smile playing on his lips. If you're too weak to handle this, then yes, get the hell out. Zara screamed. When you come back, maybe I'll let you have another try, but you'll need to change your attitude. No, Omar said, lifting his cup and taking a sip. No. Zara shouted. No, Omar confirmed. Zara approached the bar and leaned on it, trying to appear threatening to her husband. Then, if you're staying, you'd better get with the program, you jerk, she said. I'm not putting up with this crap, seriously. Omar, if you can't deal with it, get the hell out. No, Omar said again, his voice calm. You're a dumb piece of crap. Zara spat at him. Well, finally, this is how it works. This is what I do, Omar said, taking another sip. Zara's eyes widened, and a bit of foam appeared at the corner of her mouth. Go to hell with your no, Sarah. Zara spat at Omar. You know how right I am. I'm going back upstairs, and I'm going to have sex with that guy in our bedroom until I pass out. And for that, he'll promote me again. I'll be making another $15,000 a year. I'll get more clients and more bonuses, she declared. Omar shook his head, pretending not to care anymore. Truthfully, he didn't. At the start of the conversation, he had been devastated. But now he was determined. You can't stop me, Omar. Zara fumed at his silent refusal. If you want to stay with me, you'd better learn how it's going to be from now on. No, Omar said, setting down his mug. I don't want to be with you anymore. Zara, Omar said, from now on. It's over. I have something to say about that. Zara snapped, not quite. Omar, he said confidently. Here, let me prove something to you. Omar sat down, took a deep breath, and suddenly shouted, Hey, you in my bedroom, Vice President, you're trespassing. Get out of my house. He's not leaving. Zara jabbed her finger at Omar. He's definitely leaving, Omar said, placing his elbows back on the countertop. Stay where you are, Imran, Zara yelled toward the bedroom. Omar calmly took his mug in both hands again. Zara stared at Omar for a few seconds, not quite processing what had just happened. Then, after a few breaths, her thoughts began to return. Omar, it shouldn't be like this, Zara said angrily to her husband. I know, Omar said. Look, I know I've wronged you. I know it hurts you. I wish you didn't have to see this. Zara vaguely gestured toward the bedroom. But this is what I need to move up. You men react to sex. You should know that. Omar nodded slightly, signaling that he understood, though his expression showed he couldn't deny the truth of her words. I feel good, honey, really. I'm not being ignored anymore. If I can feel better about myself and succeed, then why not? Zara continued. Why shouldn't I do it? Well, probably because you were my wife, Omar said simply. I'm still your wife, Sarah snapped at him. I don't feel anything for that guy. He's just someone who can give me something. No, that's not it, not exactly, Omar said. But now I've decided to stop being patient with you. He sat back down and started to gesture as he spoke. I understand what you mean when you talk about not being noticed. I'm not a significant person. I describe myself as average, Omar admitted. Sometimes that hurts. I agree with you on that. Zara crossed her arms over her chest, deciding to let Omar speak. I paid for the first liposuction. I paid for the second one. I paid for those breasts, that haircut. I paid for that but enhancement. For all of this, Omar gestured casually at Zara's body. I paid because I loved you and believed in you, even when you started to change after the first breast augmentation. I didn't say anything because it was a big change for you. I knew things were shifting and you were getting what you thought you needed. But my mistake was being patient with you. Omar looked thoughtful. You became ugly, Zara. Zara scoffed mockingly. It started with those comments you made about your sister at Thanksgiving, Omar said. They were just needlessly rude. She looks a lot like you used to. You didn't need to treat her like that. And then when your mom tried to talk to you, you shut her down. Oh, sure, you didn't pick on your sister after that. But you ignored her and never apologized. That's her problem, Zara declared. No, it's a family problem, Omar dared to argue. You hurt your sister, you hurt your parents, and then you kept doing the same thing to them. Have you noticed they barely talk to you anymore? Well, your brother, when talking to me, uses some colorful language to describe you. I stopped defending you a long time ago. When he did, Zara dismissed him with a wave of her hand. That was around the time he started teasing me in bed about your enhancements, Omar continued thoughtfully. Yeah, for a while it was playful. But after that, it stopped being teasing, didn't it? Omar gave Zara a questioning look. After a while, you started trying to convince me that you were somehow superior to me. You liked it. It took him some time to realize that Zara enjoyed humiliating him only in the bedroom, but still it was there. So what? Zara asked with a smirk. And then you turned on your old friends, Omar recalled. Jews, you were awful to her. She was your maid of honor, remember? Zara just shrugged. Screw her if she can't see the obvious. Well, she did see it, Omar confirmed. That's why you're no longer friends. Zara closed her eyes, took a deep breath in frustration, raised her eyebrows, lowered them, and waited for Omar to continue. "You were getting worse and worse," Omar said, moving further and further away from the Zara he fell in love with. Yeah, she wasn't a model or a supermodel, but she was loving, fun, smart, a bit charmingly insecure, caring, compassionate, terrible at cooking, and an amazing friend. My best friend. Zara looked at Omar with a worried expression on her face. "And you?" Omar gestured toward her with an open hand. "You're just a mean plastic doll. One I don't like and one I'm no longer going to put up with. Then get the hell out," Zara spat, pointing at the front door. "No," Omar said simply. A knock was heard from the other side of the house. "Sorry," Omar said, standing up and leaving the room. "And now what?" Zara asked irritably, rolling her eyes at the knock on the door. The doorbell rang, and Zara heard Omar shout, "Coming!" Zara leaned back to see who was at the door as Omar opened it. Upon opening the door, Omar greeted two uniformed police officers, a man and a woman. Come in," Omar said, as the two cautious officers stepped inside. They quickly noticed Sarah through the doorway to the kitchen. The woman officer asked, "Sir?" "Yes, thank you for coming," Omar said, pulling his wallet from his pocket. He took out his driver's license and handed it to the male officer. "Here's my ID. I'm the sole owner of this house. Upstairs in the bedroom is an intruder on my property. Additionally, I believe I need assistance in escorting this woman off the premises." Omar nodded in Zara's direction. Zara shouting, walking toward him upstairs. The female officer asked, "Is he armed? What happened?" "Omar, stop it," Zara yelled. "Officers, it's not true." "Hold on," Omar said, moving past the officers and Zara. He walked into the living room and picked up his tablet from the coffee table, turning it on. "Hold on," he mumbled as he pulled up a document. He returned to the room and handed the tablet to the male officer. "What's this?" the officer asked, scanning the document. He reviewed it, then looked at Omar's driver's license and handed the tablet back. "All right, you're the owner. What's going on here?" "Omar," Zara exclaimed, both angry and slightly fearful. She didn't like where this was heading. It was out of her control. "I came home and found my wife in bed with her employer. They were engaging in indecent activities," Omar explained. "I told the guy he was trespassing on my property, but he's still here. I'd like him removed, and I want to press charges." Zara exclaimed again. The female officer muttered something about hating domestic calls. "Officers, I invited this person here," Zara explained, glaring at her husband. "He's not trespassing on anyone's property." "Excuse me, mine," the officer said, trying to avoid looking at the cleavage Zara was displaying. "But if any family member claims an outsider has trespassed on private property under the city's new laws, that person has to leave. If not," the officer shrugged. "Did you inform him that he's not welcome?" "Yes," Omar said. "I shouted it from the stairs. I didn't tell him face to face. As far as I know, the door was locked, and I didn't want to risk a direct confrontation. But I have a recording." Omar tapped his chest pocket, indicating his phone. "Omar, Zara," he hissed. "And also I'd like her," nodding toward Zara, "removed from the premises. I don't want her arrested, just taken out." "Was there any violence involved?" the female officer asked, while the male officer spoke into his radio. She looked directly at Zara. "What, no?" Zara said, pointing at Omar. "I didn't touch him. I meant, did he hit you?" the female officer clarified. But when Zara shook her head, the officer assumed nothing had happened. "Sir, may I ask you to show me where the bedroom is?" the male officer asked. "My partner will stay here with this woman." "Of course," Omar replied, walking past the two women. Could you stay with me?" the female officer asked, looking at Zara. Zara began watching as her husband and the officer headed up the stairs. "This is all wrong," she exclaimed. "I'm sure it feels that way to you," the officer replied. 10 minutes later, the male officer came down the stairs with two others following him. turning the corner at the bottom of the stairs. Zara's boss appeared in front. He was wearing suit pants with the button fastened, but his fly and belt were undone. That was all he had on. His pale chest, messy hair, and angry eyes told the story of a miserable man. He shot Zara a furious glare as he passed her and headed for the door behind him. The male officer was holding a jacket, shirt, tie, and shoes, with socks tucked inside in one hand, while his other hand held Zara's boss by the handcuffs behind his back. As they passed, the male officer glanced at his partner and nodded. "I'll let her gather her things," the female officer said to her partner. Omar stood off to the side, watching everything unfold. "Omar, don't do this," Zara pleaded with her husband, realizing what was happening. "It's already done," Omar said sadly. "I don't feel safe with you here. You bring strangers into the house when I'm not around, and you hide it from me. Your behavior has changed a lot lately. You need to leave. Take your clothes and whatever you need, and we'll deal with the lawyers later." Omar said this mostly for the officer in case he needed a witness in court, along with his recording. He figured that might be necessary. "Omar, no," Zara pleaded, reaching out her hands. "We can fix this. We've been trying to fix it for a long time," Omar said, his eyes closing as memories flooded over him. "It didn't work. It's over." "Sir, can we take some of her things?" the female officer asked. Zara stood in stunned silence as the reality of the situation loomed over her like a heavy cloud. "Of course," Omar said. "Her car is in the garage, the new BMW, not the old Subaru. She can use that." Nodding, the officer turned to Zara and said, "Come on, sweetie. Let's get your things." As Zara and the officer went upstairs, Omar took out his phone and stopped the recording. He wasn't sure how good the video quality would be, but he was confident the audio would be excellent. Standing still, he ensured the recording was uploaded to the right location, then sent copies to his lawyer, Zara's family members, and his own family. It didn't take long. He asked his lawyer to inform Zara's employers, but the lawyer advised him to wait. It would be better if she remained employed in case the worst happened and divorce suddenly became the next step. "Like now, Omar, we can still fix this," Zara said, coming down the stairs and seeing her soon-to-be ex-husband. "I've already tried," Omar said, putting his phone back in his pocket and silencing it. "I talked to you about how you were behaving. I tried for months. At first you listened, then you stopped. And a couple of weeks ago, after I saw you with your boss at the company party, I stopped trying too. These last couple of weeks, I've spent gathering my thoughts about it all. Omar, please, I've already said this to you. Remember," Omar said softly. "Do you remember how many times?" Came on the female officer, standing still, holding one of Zara's suitcases. Zara grabbed the handles of her suitcases, looking incredibly lost, and headed toward the garage with the officer. Omar stood still for a while, waiting. Felt like it wasn't quite over yet. When he heard the garage door open, the BMW drive out, and then the garage door close, he exhaled, feeling the tension ease just a little. He collapsed onto the couch and let out a heavy sigh. Then he cried for his wife, hoping that one day she might free herself from what she had become. The coffee on the kitchen bar had long gone cold.